So right now you should have your yellow sheet glued inside your notebooks. You should have a calculator on your desk. And I'd like you to try out every one of these questions to make sure you know what's going on. If you are having difficulties, since I'm not here, I'd really like you to help each other out. And if you're having further difficulty, you can always go across the hall and ask Mrs. Lamontagne for help. Okay, so today we have, we're going to look at another trig ratio, and it's the button that says COS, C-O-S, on your calculator. So it's going to be very similar to what we did yesterday. We have here, this is the formula. Cosine of an angle is equal to the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse side. So things change here a little bit. Again, we're going to use this short-formed formula here. Cos theta equals A over H. So A is the adjacent, H is the hypotenuse, and theta is your angle, so your point of reference. Okay, so the first piece here, we're just going to get used to using our calculators. So what's going to happen is you are going to put in your calculator cos 42. So when you put in cos 42 into your calculator, you should get the following answer, 0.7431. Remember, we're rounding, and you will lose marks if we don't round correctly. The next example that we're going to do, we can do the cos of 9, which is equal to 0.987. No, it says 6 on your calculator, but when I round, it's 7. I'll give you a second to put in the next two. The cosine of 20 you should have gotten was 0.939. It says 6, but again, because of rounding to 4 decimal places, that becomes 7. And the last one, when you put in cos 90, you should have gotten 0. Okay, so this is again a similar, so this is just plugging this in. Again, this is showing you that cos of any number is just giving you a number. Okay, now number 2, it says now we're finding the measure of each angle. So that means I'm solving for these letters here, and these letters all represent an angle. So similar to yesterday, what we are going to do is we are going to say angle D, and I know it's an angle because it's a capital letter, is equal to the cos inverse, or the cos -1 of 0.8. So again, what you want to do when you put that in your calculator, you will use your shift button or second function button and hit your cos button on there. So again, the sequence would be you will either have a second function button or a shift button. You press first, then you will press cos. And when you do that, you should see on your calculator that you have cos with a -1 sign. Then you'll type in 0.8 and hit equals. When you do that for cos of 0.8, you should get an angle, and again, if I'm rounding the angle to the nearest whole number, you get 36.8, which we can round to 37 degrees. The next one again here, so if I want to solve for angle A, again, I'm going to take the cos inverse of 0.6. Okay, so again, when you type that into your calculator, the cos inverse of 0.6 gives us where A is equal to 53 degrees. Again, if you weren't there yesterday and you need help, please ask the person beside you. I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to figure out what angle K is and angle J is. Okay, so for angle K here, again, I'm going to write the cos inverse of 0.375. When I do the cosine inverse of 0.375, I get 70 degrees when we round to the nearest degree. Again, or not 70, whoops. You actually get 67.9, which gives you 68 degrees. And then the work that you should show here is angle J is equal to the cos inverse of 0.2323. And when I do the cos inverse of 0.2323, I get J is equal to 77 degrees. Again, 76.5, so we round that up to 77 degrees. Okay, going on to the next piece here. So now we are solving for, these are all angles that we are solving for. So when you do your homework and you're solving for angles, these are the questions, these are the 3 examples that you want to follow. Now, when I'm given a triangle, again, my first step here is to always label your sides. Okay, so I want you to I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to label all the side lengths on this triangle. Again, how do we label them? Or what are we labeling them? An H for hypotenuse, an O for opposite, and an A for adjacent. Okay, so for this first example here, again, I'm going to first label my hypotenuse, which is always the side across from the 90-degree angle. My point of reference is here because that's where X is. So I label this unknown side O, and this side here becomes my adjacent side. So again, step 1, I always labeled my hypotenuse, then I label my opposite side, then I label my adjacent side. So what will I write here? My formula here is cos cos of theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, so you're going to notice here I'm not given the opposite side, so this is why I have to use another formula, the cosine formula. So when I plug everything in, cos theta, instead of writing theta, theta here represents x, is equal to my A side here. I've labeled this A on my triangle here, which is 4. So I'll write 4 over, and then my next piece is this is my hypotenuse here, which I've labeled H, and my hypotenuse is on the bottom here, so I will label that 13. Okay, so what's my next step? This is similar to the question that we just did before. I want to isolate for x, so how do I do that? The inverse. So this becomes x equals the inverse of cos. And remember, we have to put this in brackets, otherwise we get an error. Some of your calculators already put the bracket in there for you, which means you just have to close the bracket. So I'll give you a minute and I want you to type that into your calculator to tell me what x is equal to. So remember, you hit the second function or your shift button, cos, then you put bracket 4 divided by 13, bracket equals, and this is talking about a degree, so we're going to round to the nearest degree, and you should get 72 degrees. Again, if you're having difficulties with this, ask a friend. They should be able to help you out. Okay, going to my next example. You should have labeled this one again. My opposite side to my 90 degree is my H. Opposite side, here's my point of reference. So this is my opposite, which leaves this side to be my adjacent side. So I'll write my formula out here. Cos theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, A over H. So now when I plug in this information, so here's my A side, A. Here's my H side, H. Again, what is my point of reference here? They've called this theta, so I'm going to keep it as actually theta. So what do? I write cos theta equals adjacent is 5, hypotenuse is 13. Okay, what's my next step? Theta equals the cos inverse of a 5 over 13. So take a minute, plug that into your calculator. And again, we're rounding to the nearest degree. So theta here is equal to 67 degrees is what you should have got. Okay, I want you to try this next example out on your own. Okay, so again, you should have hopefully labeled your triangle as the following. This is the hypotenuse, opposite, and the adjacent. So when I plug everything in, I should get cos theta, again, they've called that angle here theta, is equal to my adjacent side is 3 over my hypotenuse, which is 7. So I will write here now theta, or you should have written theta is equal to the cos inverse of 3 over 7. And when you do 3 over 7, or 3 divided by 7, we should get that theta was equal to 65 degrees. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward, and you will have to do questions like this in your homework where you're solving for theta. Okay, and this is the steps that you will take every single time when you're solving for an angle using your cosine formula. Okay, the last type of thing that we are going to talk about here is now we are going to solve for a side length. So anytime we're solving for a side length, again, this is the process that you are going to do. Again, first step here is labeling your triangles. So here's my point of reference because they give me this angle. So I'm going to label my sides: hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent. I write out my formula. Cos theta equals A over H. I can plug in my information now. So remember here, here's my H, which I know. Here's my A. I don't know, that's X, but I still am going to highlight that. And here is my angle, and I know the angle is represented by theta. So when I plug all this information in, I get cos 38 equals X over 12. So similar to yesterday, we're going to use cross multiplication to solve. So that becomes over 1. And I'm going to draw an X to figure out what I have to multiply together. So what am I multiplying together? 12 times cos 38 is equal to 1 times X just gives me X. Well, this is a nice easy one. I can just plug that into my calculator. 12 times cos of 38. And we're going to round to 1 decimal place because this is a side. So I'll give everybody a couple of seconds to figure this out. Okay, sorry about that. So again, when you type that into your calculator, you will get 9.5. Okay, your next example here, again, I'm going to label my triangle. Here's my hypotenuse, here's my opposite, here's my adjacent. So I have here is my formula, cos theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So I'm going to plug in my information here. Cos 63 is equal to, my adjacent is y over my hypotenuse is 24. Put it over 1. Again, I'm going to draw my x here. What's connected? 24 times cos 63 is equal to 1 times y. Well, that's nice and easy. 1 times y just gives me y. That's why I wrote it there. So I can do 25 times the cos of 63, which gives me y equals 10.9. Okay, the last example I'm going to do here, again, label my side lengths, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. Okay, so when I plug this in, I get cos 47 equals 25.9 over x. Now this one's a little bit different because now my variable's in the denominator. So when you have a question like this, I want you to refer to this example. So again, I put it over 1. I'm going to cross multiply. So I take x times cos 47 is equal to 25.9 times 1 still gives me 25.9. That's the same thing. My final step here is I divide by cos 47, divide by cos 47 because I want to get that by itself. So what happens here? Those cancel out, so I'm left with x is equal to 25.9 divided by cos 47 gives me, again, I'm rounding to 1 decimal place, 37 point, oh, actually it just becomes 38 with the rounding. Okay, so you have a worksheet. Hopefully you got this. If not, I'm going to ask some of my leaders to definitely help me out with this when you're doing it. So good luck, and then I'll see you on Monday.